And if you're in the UK, I hope you're having a good afternoon. I hope it'll be better in 2 hours' time when we finish this. So thank you for rejoining us for the How to Human programme. Welcome to part 2. It follows in a similar vein to part 1 that you experienced, but there's going to be a little bit more interaction, a little bit more application of the knowledge that we shared together last time. As Skye said, I'm going to do a similar presentation. We're going to do questions at the end, but if you have any immediate concerns, worries, problems, technical issues, or comments, feel free to put it into chat and we can kind of review it at the end. As Skye said, we are going to be using Menti today, so we can communicate via the magic of polling, and also going to look at some stuff online. So if you can make sure that you have an extra browser window open or page open for the big things we're going to look at. And I also hope that you've received a worksheet that was sent out. If you haven't, that will also be put in chat just in case you didn't receive it or haven't located it. We are going to be using that worksheet in today's session. If it is something you've been able to print out physically, I suggest you'll need a pen or a pencil. If it's something digitally that you want to have and mark up on your screen, absolutely go ahead and do that. But otherwise, if there's no immediate questions, I am going to dive into sharing my screen. Okay, so welcome. We're going to go to How to Human, part 2. And today we are going to go straight into Menti just to make sure that's all up and running like we normally do. And I'm going to offer this code for you today. It is 3187. 9762. I know Skye will be putting that in the chat, so you always have it to refer to. If you're not familiar with Menti for any reason, you can use the QR code on the right-hand side if you want to open it up on your phone, which is really easy to use, or a tablet device. Otherwise, you can go onto menti.com to go onto an online browser to be able to access this on the internet. And we are going to crack on today with just a little bit of a warm-up. A bit of a check-in. You might notice that I always pick an animal. Today it's goats, which will become clear why I've chosen goats, but I'd love to know how you're all doing today in goat scale. I was a 3 personally, but obviously now, you know, I'm chatting to all other humans. I perked up a little bit, but I'm not alone with number 3. Excellent. Oh, good. We've got some number 1s. I think number 1 looks friendly. Number 8, I hope I will revive you in the next 2 hours. Good to know. We've got a number 6. Okay, I might have to win you over. And number 4. Okay, it's a mixed bag today. Well, regardless, it's nice that we've got a range of people. It's just a bit of fun to check in, and I'm glad we've got Menti working. If there's any problems, please do let Skye know in the chat. We will return to using Menti in a little bit. But I'll keep that window open for now, and we will crack on with the rest of the presentation. So, because this is part 2, I will assume that you have referenced, watched, or attended part 1. We are continuing some of the themes and the examples in the slides, but I will do a tiny little recap for the key ideas for us today. So, we sort of started looking at this idea of leadership and this idea of managing people and how we can attend work and have great values and great intentions. But sometimes for many reasons, it's very hard to follow with best practice and good actions. And we discovered that there's obviously a gap here, and we call this the value action gap. And our aim really for the work that we'd like to offer you and the work we can do together is to be able to bridge that gap. And we obviously understood that finding connection and the tool that we give you was a way to do that, but we always still need to bridge this gap. And obviously we worked through this, the triangular iceberg, the 4-step framework of observations, feelings, needs, and requests. And we looked at obviously how we can build our knowledge about, you know, how to connect, mainly through conversation with ourselves or with others, and how that when we get to the bottom, we can learn how to request a little bit better. by using tools like the Human Handbook. And the handbook was a task given to you to hopefully be able to start or think about or consider, be curious about between the first session and today. And so we understood that also for you to be in a position where you can do something with it was to require a little bit of leverage, and learn how to flip this on its head, really, by learning to use the knowledge that you have and making the hidden visible. That's the point of understanding an iceberg model, and this one in particular was be able to bring these important things to the surface. And as a person that clearly cares, because that's why you've turned up today, that is something that you have wanted to do by bringing a tool like the Human Handbook up to the fore so that it can be used based on all the knowledge that you've been given. We then obviously, stuck a triangle in between two other triangles. We put the framework as a model to explain how we bridge the gap, how that learning can help us move from good values and intentions to best practice, to good actions. And that from this position is where we got to the last session, and why the Human Handbook actually became quite a mode of strength to be able to bridge this gap. We briefly touched on the fact that on this bridge, it allows people to follow you, but it also allows us to consider the application of the Human Handbook. And from here, we were looking at recruitment, onboarding, performance reviews, feedback, team management, and working with external contractors or subcontractors, people that you come in contact with less frequently. And from this is a starting point to discuss, well, you know how to fill this document in, but like, what do we do with it? So that's as far as we got. But this is a chance for me to actually sort of hear more about you, if you're able and willing to offer up some of your insights. So I invite you to return back to the Menti page, and we are going to ask just 2 questions for the start. I would love to know, just obviously in simple words, how was filling in the handbook for you, if you were able to do it, or at least made a start? I'd also love to know if you didn't get to do it for whatever reason, but what perhaps were the barriers or obstacles, whether you had actually a lack of time to do it and it needs more time and energy than you were able to give it. So I'd love to understand, what your response was. Anything goes. As being honest as possible really helps us to provide better training for you in the future. So I'm glad someone thought it was fun, fantastic, cathartic, brilliant, fulfilling, thought-provoking, insightful. Brilliant word, thank you. It was a good springboard. Okay. That's nice that it felt like this could lead to other things, or maybe get you curious about other aspects. Okay, it was limited. Okay, we'll get to it. It was lower priority. Never ending to-do list. It's absolutely fair. Lack of time. Yeah, busy. It is very hard to find the time to do something like this. Is something that we are already actively discussing. That making the time for you to be able to communicate needs to be considered in order to be able for you to find connection. Interesting seems to be coming out on top, which is nice to hear. Anybody else? Okay. Brilliant. Well, wonderful range of words. Love that. I love the fact that it obviously clearly it improved curiosity. If I put my own word there in terms of understanding, thought-provoking and interesting and insightful, self-reflective and self-discovery, but also, that it does take time. It's something to be curious. It's not necessarily a fix or an easy solution. So thank you wholeheartedly for being honest in your insight there. That really helps us. I'm going to go to the second question, which I'm going to give you a bit longer to think about, because you can write more in-depth answers here. What we would love to know is, which section of the Human Handbook do you feel is most useful in your organisation, and why? And to recap, with the Human Handbook, we had the sections of communication preferences, about what I need, the actual intro about yourself if you wanted to self-describe. We also had the 3 main boxes about information, instructions, being in meetings, and giving and receiving feedback. So those are sort of the big sections. I'd love to know actually which one you felt was potentially most useful. There's no hurry. We've got a few minutes to be able to give you time to write. Amazing. Thank you so much. Communication preferences. Professionals and contacts who approach me always want to do it in a certain way, and I've struggled finding words to address my obstacles with that. Fantastic. Communication preferences. Is helpful day-to-day to establish boundaries. Yeah, brilliant. Best work practice. Key information was good for me to vocalize the things I need to work best and encourage that conversation. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, I didn't realize how I struggled to process verbal info till I did the handbook. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's like, I'm really humbled that you were able to express that today. Communication preference is huge if followed. It is always, and I will always say this, it's an offering. Just like all of this work is your way of offering to connect. It is not a demand and an instruction. So it also requires the empathy that if people don't accept your offer, how to continue maintaining connection, even if perhaps they have chosen not, as you say, to follow communication preferences, how to keep working at it, to keep those lines of communication open. Communication, pretty much everything we do is online digital, so it's so important to get it right. Yeah. I would like to sort of spend more time talking about tone with regards to correspondence and communication. I think it's something that I've discovered about my human handbook, about when you get into situations with communications where you misread tone, or tone can be easily misread. You know, everything from using punctuation and caps locks might mean shorthand to one person, but it might mean something else to somebody you're not so familiar with. And so, you know, I think communication preferences with regards to tone is something that I'd like to explore a little bit further. Maybe there's someone else got some comments about that. Being in meetings, it would be great to know more about how to engage everyone and how they're best taking info so we can adapt how things are presented. Well, it's a great segue into today's session. We are absolutely going to talk about how we can better take in information. And it isn't necessarily about how we all adapt to every possible variation, but more how we improve our advocacy around it. Preferred meeting times and having these taken seriously and what's been seen difficult. Yeah, again, I would always offer that if you return back to the framework that we looked at, which talked about needs, the feelings and needs, and talked about our personal responsibility, and also those heavier words where we feel that we're worried about what other people might think of us and other emotions that are external to us, that this idea of keeping people happy and not being seen as difficult is the work one must do to oneself. And that does take time and practice, is to be able to go, as long as your needs are being met and you've communicated that in a connective and respectful and dignified way, then that's the best you will ever be able to do. We can't stop other people appearing as though you might, maybe using words like you might be difficult, or worrying that you might be come across as that. Again, something that we're going to look at a little bit more detail today. But this is wonderful. This is wonderful comments for, I hope, for everyone else to see. Obviously, communication preferences is a winner today. So thank you again for sharing all of that. Great insight for us. Okay, I'm just going to pause on using Menti for a minute, and I'm just going to return back to our presentation today, and we will come back to Menti a little bit later. Okay. So as you well know, I'm a person that loves triangles. You may have guessed that so far. So as being a creative, it does irk me that my shape that we've created is quite nice and neat and finished. And so it sort of needs a bit of a top up to make it truly perfect for me as a form. But the idea is that we need to do a little bit more work. We need to sort of add a little bit more to our understanding to top this up. And that's what we're going to do for the first half of today is do some things and give you some extra tools in order to top this up, so that we have a little bit of an extra layer to be able to improve the way that we use the human handbook and how we request things. But I am going to return back to our person that we tried to take care of in the first part. And this person was obviously dealing with a lot of negative self-talk. We have identified some phrasing that they had used that was filled with assumptions and judgments about themselves. And our job was to shift all of this into a way that uses our framework so that they can better advocate for themselves. And as you will remember, we talked about having shifting to observation. So we gave them some better language to actually describe the actual facts of what was going on. Then we were able to identify perhaps what their feelings were, as opposed to their thoughts about how people might perceive them, but more about how they felt inside themselves. We understood that they had some confusion and some anxiety and were feeling unsure how to move on. And then we kind of isolated that this person's needs, these fundamental needs they have, was actually for clarity and support, and that these needs had not been met in that instance. So we were able to shift away from negative self-talk into a better understanding of clarity and support. Now, this is obviously super helpful for this person and for anyone this person's interacting with who may be able to assist them. We got to a point where we needed them to request something. And so we asked, what can I ask for that will give me clarity and support and help me complete the task? That was the question. And last session, we looked at the words and the grammar and the structure of like the way we could ask, where we could phrase our requests. But we can do a bit more. That's not the whole picture. So I wanted to sort of think about this person, and rather than just give them some neat phrases, I wanted to make it a little bit more bespoke to them. And there are many other ways to request things that best suit your own body and brain. And this idea of coming up with the perfect requests isn't necessarily just a clever use of language, but more a greater understanding of the whole being of you. How we request something is entirely bespoke, and it can come from the way that you operate as a unique individual. And this is really exciting. If you can tap into this, you can really tailor-made your way that you request things that feel super confident, super comfortable within yourself. Rather than just learning some words from me, it's a way that you can learn to speak that is actually really connected to who you are. And that's what this is the top up bit, to be able to make it more bespoke. So the human handbook. Now, this is something that we've already started, but there was a little bit that you didn't fill in at the top. And I asked you not to complete the section on the top right hand side saying my strongest learning style is. And there was a good reason for that, because I'm going to explain how to fill it in today. And this bit is about, we use the word learning because we're all constantly learning, but how we connect and how we communicate is completely interlinked with our learning style. We all have one. It is often guided by our genetics, by our upbringing, by our experiences, by our psychological makeup, our neurological makeup. It is many things all put together. And our learning style, therefore, controls how we take in information, how we process it, and how we express it and communicate. So if we're thinking about how we communicate and connect with people, we should also think about how we learn. I find it very sad in the UK that fundamental education is not based on learning how we learn. It's more learning the facts as opposed to learning the art of learning. And that's something we can all benefit from understanding ourselves a little bit better in that respect. So the way we are approaching this for this session as a quick and easy tool is something called the VARK test. Now, apologies for those that know what this is and had already experienced it, but for those that haven't, this is like a tool to identify what your learning style. It is not deep science. This is a relatively blunt tool, but fantastic in making a point when we're doing this kind of presentation, and a useful springboard to explore other ways of understanding this data that you're going to get. And the VARK test is a way to help you identify your preference. Now, this will change and evolve in your life. So this is not a hard and fast rule, but it does work on the principle that there are 4 main types. Okay, so we have visual, aural, read and write, and kinesthetic, hence what the acronym VARK stands for. And this is something where you understand that we're a mashup of all 4 of them, but that one or 2 might be more dominant than the other. And so it's helpful to understand this, because it's better to lean into something that you have a preference for than try and force yourself to do something that you don't. So I'm just going to explain the VARK before we actually get a chance to do it ourselves. When you do the VARK test online, you will go into a page and it will give you some questions. And those questions will allow you to tick 1 or more answers that feel appropriate to you in your response. They're always quite generalized questions here about how you navigate the world. And you'll end up getting your results, and here's mine on the right hand side. I came out as my learning preference being mild kinesthetic. So as you can see, my scoring, I had a highest score for being kinesthetic, then visual, and then aural, read and write was a big fat 0 for me, for lots of good reasons. I have an auditory processing issue. So I absolutely get the aural. Read and write really fascinates me because I do actually really like writing, but it's not my go-to way of absorbing information. And this is very much not about what you like and what you don't like, or even what you have to do for your job and what you don't. It's actually how best you absorb information, and potentially then leads to memories being formed, which can improve your communication with people. And just because one works in a visual field doesn't necessarily mean that you're automatically going to score high in visual, quite interestingly. It's not really kind of linked like that. This is more about essentially how your brain works, regardless of your interests or your actual job. So this is a really interesting way to understand something and maybe be able to use it as a springboard. For those that aren't familiar with the concepts around these modes, there are 4 of them: visual, aural, read and write, and kinesthetic. So visual, I'm just going to recap for people. Visual is for people with a strong visual preference of learning through seeing information potentially in different formats, so a variety, having layout in terms of how information is presented, whether it's all ordered, whether it is chaotic, whether it's a massive mind map or it's something else, whether data presented in graphs is easier than numbers, same goes for charts, whether diagrams are easier to follow than written instructions, for example, and having maps and plans. I can easily visualize a 3D object or building if being shown plans. It's something that I feel very comfortable doing. It's a good job because I spent 20 years being a designer, but that's obviously how a brain can work with visual material. And then there's aural. So aural is for those that actually really respond well to the conversations with people and how information is transmitted through conversation. So that can be through discussions with people. That can be like hearing stories, so like podcasts or audiobooks, or listening to talks, for example, going to talks and watching and hearing people speak, and also like having more chats rather than necessarily formalized meeting may mean that flow feels like it's a better way for you to engage in conversation. Those that really like a phone call probably lean more into being aural than those that like to just write emails and feel more comfortable doing that. So aural is a great way of learning information and retaining information. Then there's read and write. which is obviously it does what it says on the tin. It's definitely for people that like information and data in list format, perhaps, where the written word is something more tangible to hold on to than verbal words just spoken in a conversation. It allows you to return to that word and remember what it looked like. Having text in all its formats, whether it's print or online, you know, being able to read at your own pace, and being able to sort of write things down rather than necessarily remembering. Difference between people perhaps, you know, typing messages rather than leaving voice notes. This idea of read and write, and I've worked with a lot of clients who really can't cope with the visual nature of spreadsheets and much prefer like the data in lists, whereas I'm the complete opposite. I for example can't work with lists of dates. I need to see a calendar, like normally like an overview calendar or of a month, in order to understand, you know, how information about time is spread across a bigger period of time, like a month, as opposed to these are all the dates. And it's interesting, I come up with working with lots of people who have really wildly different preferences. Neither is right or wrong. And then kinesthetic. It just so happens the kinesthetic color on the VARK test is green. It's nothing to do with me, but I am scoring highest in kinesthetic, so I think there's a reason why I also wear green. And this is very much like where you get an awful lot of extra information and feel more confident and comfortable when there's spatial information coming around by using all of your senses, by being able to be kind of surrounded by it, having the chance to use your hands to do something practical, tangible. You're able to hold something. You're actually in an environment where you're getting lots of stimuli that actually helps you, where somebody is demonstrating perhaps, or showing you examples. Or you've also read about perhaps people who have done it before, you've watched them do it before. And actually making errors, you know, just being more willing to just start playing and see what happens. You know, those that are very confident in certain softwares, for example, where you don't have to read the full manual and watch every video, you just start intuitively having a play to see what you learn. That's definitely me. But why it takes forever for me to learn anything. But the idea of kinesthetic is somebody that also needs to practically engage. So those are, and we're often a mix of all of them. We have all of these aspects to us, but there'll be something that feels more comfortable, more natural to you. So I'm going to ask in Menti your thoughts. I'm going to ask you, as carrying on with the theme of goats today, what dominant style might you have? If you've done this test already, then obviously you know. I know that you will be, many will be multimodal, as it's called, but when I describe the 4 modes, how do you feel like you best connect with them? You know, do you feel like you are more of a read and write person? There's 2 people already. Or do you feel like you're actually more of a visual learner? Or like me, there's green's in the lead, love this. Whether there is something more about having a practical hands-on approach. Dominant style learning style might you have? If I ain't doing, I ain't learning. That's absolutely right. Okay. Read and write in the lead. Anybody else? Oh, 1 hour, excellent. Okay, read and write's 1. Okay. Read and write. Okay, so even we have this on every session we do. There's nobody visual today. But interestingly, that we always have a range, and it's always fascinating that even in the same company, the same team, doing the same job, there will be a difference in the sort of the learning style preference. And this is something that, particularly if you're managing a team of people, you just need to be able to consider that the learning style is not necessarily just linked to the natural job you might be doing. That if you are administrating, that you are spending a lot of time writing, does not mean that you're automatically a read and write person. Just because you're doing lots of visual material doesn't mean that you're automatically a visual, or the fact that you have to do a lot of speaking doesn't mean you're oral. So actually understanding your dominant learning style alongside the job that you have to do is helpful to see if there's any ways of improving or making that more in alignment, or making it more comfortable and confident for you. Okay, I'm just going to pause that there. I'm going to go back and continue. So going back to our person who couldn't remember the order of the instructions, we know they needed clarity and support, and they were trying to ask a question about how to get this task done. So the way that we can use the VARK test in a simplistic way, but a useful way, is to actually consider what is the dominant learning style, the preference of this person, and should we tailor their request to what feels most natural to them. So if they were a visual learner, then we could say that this person should be asking for, is there a diagram I could follow to complete the task? So that if this person needs to remember it, then actually it's not helpful just saying, could you say it? Or could you write it down? Actually, this person knows that actually if they could see a diagram, that would probably help. And maybe this is something this person then can remember to ask multiple times. And peers and managers could also consider that actually for instructions or briefs, actually diagrams might be useful in this instance. So is there a diagram I could follow to complete the task? If they were oral dominant, would I be able to record those instructions so I can play them back as I do the task? So again, remember we looked at all the requesting stage. This is very concrete. These are all offerings and invitations. This is all very connective language. It's also very clear and very specific to the other person. So would I be able to record those instructions so I can play them back if that person really responds well to just somebody listening and talking them through it? If they were read and write dominant, they would say, would you be willing to repeat the instructions so I can write them down? So actually having them written would obviously be key to this person as a way to remember instructions. It might seem obvious to some people, but that might not be your preference. Again, as I was saying, giving me lists of dates doesn't help me understand time. I need to see it in a visual way, for example. And like me, if they're kinesthetic, would someone be willing to demonstrate how to do the task with me? Because obviously seeing somebody do it is a natural way of learning how things, perhaps the order, like forming memories, because I've seen somebody do it. It's tangible, so I can probably more likely to remember that. It's less abstract for me. So having the understanding these different dominances and these different preferences then actually allows you to tailor your requests to something that is most likely going to be in alignment and connected with yourself. Okay, so to round it up, to finally round up and support this person, and if let's assume, because it's green, why not, that they are sort of their preferences to be kinesthetic as a learner. They're going to share their needs with their manager or their peer, and they are going to be asking, I'm feeling confused and I have a need for clarity and support. Would you be willing to demonstrate how to do the task with me? I know it's super dry, but the idea of it is the fact that actually we've called out some feelings, we've understood a need, we've built some empathy with the other person. There's no criticism, there is no need to be on the defense, but actually being very clear and specific what it is they're requesting. Now, this person might not be able to help them, but actually it does help the other person realize that maybe some time needs to be given to demonstrate something, or they could think about who else could do it. So immediately we're going to try and problem solve this so we can get the task done. And the important thing that happens is not only is this person fully advocated for all parts of themselves, their peer or manager receiving it has really understood something important about this employee. They've really understood, obviously, how important demonstrating might mean to this person. We've understood that actually demonstrating tasks really helps this person gain clarity and support. So immediately we've built a connection that can actually further their relationship moving on at work, maybe avoid these issues in the future, and build greater understanding and what I would say is supportive leadership with regards to this. So that is how we can use the top up of understanding your learning preference in order to improve the way that we request. As a recap, this is my human handbook, and I had my kinesthetic at the top. Now, I'm going to assume that most people reading this won't understand what it means. If you are embedding this into the culture of your workplace, people will be more like, if you're all doing it, everyone will know what the learning style words mean. But if you don't, then I've added the text on the right-hand side. So in order to explain it to somebody, so for me, I have added the fact that I like active participation and experiencing work in real environments with real life examples. I also respond best to diagrams and visual aids in presentations and meetings. That speaks to my score in the visual, being a visual learner. But it does say that I'm like in real life person. I much prefer to present this type of training in person with people around me in a room. I love being here with you today, but I know that my preference is I engage differently when actually I've got the spatial stimuli of people around me. So, consider that about when people are actually, maybe also doing their own presentations and workshops. Does your learning style align with that? Is there a way to adjust that if there's possible? But being able to signpost this to people is also going to give an extra bit of insight into who you are, extra chance for them to connect with you. So definitely worth doing. Okay. So we're gonna pause for 10 minutes, and we are going to allow you to do the VARK test. If you have already done this, then you've got a 10-minute break. If not, please do spend the time in the next 10 minutes being able to complete it. If you go to www.vark-learn.com, I know Sky has just put the link in the chat for you. I'm just going to show you what it looks like online so that you can anchor yourself. So this is what will happen when you go onto the website. What you want to press is the big green button with a question mark on the left-hand side that says, what is your learning preference? Okay. Once you click on that, you may get a couple of ads. If not, close those down. There we go, some ads. You'll end up with a page that looks like this, which is a series of questions that you scroll down. You are allowed to click as many as you like. You can click one or you can click two, depending on what feels appropriate to you. And if you go through the questions and answer them as best you can with just how you're feeling today, then you can go and click the button that says get results, and that will give you a score. You're not going to have to share your score with anyone today. That's not what we're here for. This is just for you. But I'd love you to be able to at least get your results in the next 10 minutes. So if I can ask you to come back at 3:50, so that's in 10 minutes time, we can continue with the rest of the presentation, and we can start to build on what you've started with your VARK test today. Any immediate problems or questions, or you can't locate the VARK test, please do reach out in chat. I will be turning my camera and mic off so that I'm not, hovering over you digitally. But I am here on chat if you need to talk. Otherwise, I will see you in 10 minutes time. All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for all your thoughts sharing in chat. It's been a pleasure to read that. And interesting, there's been some adjustments on answers from people who have previously taken the VARK test. So it's all a process of understanding your learning style and how it evolves with you. So thank you again for anyone who's shared. Oh, another mild kinesthetic person. Brilliant. Okay, so look, thank you for doing the task. It is going to continue to come in useful as we move forward, but I'm going to continue with the presentation. If you haven't finished the VARK test, you can always do it after this whenever you get a chance. So there's no pressure if that's something that you need to return to. Okay. We're going to continue. We're going to talk about your brilliant brains. Obviously, brilliant brain is something I care deeply about. I think all your brains are brilliant, and we need to understand them as best we're able in order for it to understand how we can best connect with people and communicate. So same concept really as part one. We're going to look a little bit more into the brain to help you understand what might be going on in the brains of others. So for this bit of today's session, we are going to use the worksheet that you were sent. So the worksheet should look like this, just to double check that you've received it. It's a big colourful circle with lots of numbers on it and some instructions. And we are going to, if you have this printed out, if physically writing on it is your thing, great, grab a pen or a pencil. If not, if you want it on another screen and you want to mark it up, that's also perfect. So the idea is we are going to place some crosses and draw on the sheet. So whatever you need to do that, please get that ready. And obviously I'm going to explain the whole thing as we go along. The first step of it is to take everything that you just learned about the VARK test. So you'll see on your wheel that there are 4 sections, north, south, east, west, the top, the bottom, the left and the right, marked with visual, oral, read and write and kinesthetic. And you'll see that there are numbers from 0 in the middle, to 16 on the outer perimeter of the circle, and the aim is simply to mark with a cross on this diagram where you scored on your VARK test. And lots of people have already shared some of their numbers already. Then you can just use this on Preview or any other apps that you might be, if you just want to stick it online or use it on your desktop or iPad or device if you don't have a printout. So the idea is just to mark what you've already learned. Simple task, okay? This is mine. I've put in where my kinesthetic, my visual scores are. They're obviously higher on the outside of the circle, and then my oral and read and write scores, which were super low. It's closer to the centre. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a perfect art. If you do it roughly in the middle, that's great. Okay, so if you're able to now, mark on with a cross on your diagram without however you choose to do that. Any problems, just let us know in the chat. Thank you, Sky. Sky said you can also open it Microsoft Edge and use the draw tool. I didn't know about Microsoft Edge. I'm not a big Microsoft fan, so that's really helpful to know, though. Thank you so much, Sky, for sharing that. Maybe that is useful to somebody. Okay, so once we've marked those on, we're going to go and do the other bit of the circle, but that needs a little bit more explanation from me. So we're going to look at the other words here. And we've got these words: order, time, flow, and attention. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a similar exercise where we're going to scoring around our relationship with these words. But I'm going to explain the words first before we get to score anything. And I want to start off with the word order. Order these words are all about executive functioning. For those that work in the field of neurodivergence, who are neurodivergent, you're more likely to have heard this phrase than others. But executive functioning is a term used basically for how our brains navigate and process the world. So it's essentially how we receive information, order it, process it, use it, utilize it, and express ourselves. It keeps us alive, obviously, for obvious reasons, and it allows us to just get on with our everydayness. So, but within that, there's loads of different parts of your executive functioning, more than we've got time to explore today. And what we've done is we've picked 4 of the key elements of executive functioning that do make a difference with how we connect with people and communicate. And this is why we've picked those 4 to be utilised in this training. And these 4 parts present differently in everyone. And the point of executive functioning is it's the way that your brain is made up. It is not strengths and weaknesses. It's simply how you're wired. And everybody's wiring is a little different. Thank goodness, in a way. Otherwise, the world would be a very dull place. But the idea of people's wiring can cause conflict when people want it all perfectly the same and aligned, when we sort of need to get on with our jobs and we need to deal with people. But understanding your executive functioning is always a key part of learning how you learn. And so I want to start off with the concept of order. And this is about how you manage order and structure. And I'm going to just talk about how we are at work, okay? Because people's executive functioning can be viewed differently if we're at home, in family situations, in leisure time, whatever alternative. But we're just viewing how we operate when we're in work mode. And so thinking about how we manage order and structure, that's about how we plan and organize ourselves at work, how we are able to put the chunks of the tasks that need to be done in a certain order to know how to achieve them, or to organize which parts perhaps need to be delegated out to others. Essentially understanding the whole, because you understand how it's all put together. It's like understanding the jigsaw puzzle, but also sort of being on top of all the parts. Goal setting is a big part of order and structure. You know what you're aiming for, you're clear what the brief might be. You really love a good, clear brief, so that you then know how to break that down to achieve it. Working within structures. So, for some people, they really benefit from being given good routine, good structure, good, clear instructions about how to do things, or good working structures within an organization, particular pipelines, particular critical path, whatever it might work for you. That's actually really helpful as a structure to work on, rather than those that just see what happens from day to day. Then another part of that is about following processes, so being able to keep on track with ways of doing things rather than necessarily experimenting and deviating. There's nothing wrong with that, but for some people, managing order and structure is something that comes very easy. It's a really important part of their working day. I find having order and structure incredibly important, and I put it into my day wherever possible. I know this because when I don't have it, it feels uncomfortable. So managing order and structure is a big part of understanding your executive functioning, because that's going to shift how you operate. Then we go to the other side and we look at time. Managing time, managing your time, managing time management within a workplace structure and projects, for example. Now, we all have a different relationship with time, and that's down to our executive functioning. So this obviously can be affected by neurodivergency issues, but also how you might have been role modeled, how clear your company role models the concept of time management, the nature of an industry, for example. It isn't all just on the shoulders of your brain, but how we manage time is something that can either feel very easy or very difficult to you. And it's not about, again, it's nothing to do with strengths and weaknesses. It's about how much friction gets created for you. We talk about perception of busyness, those that are always perhaps feeling that they're in a state of busyness, that they never feel able to catch up with themselves, would be an example of managing time very difficult. But those that are constantly able to stick to deadlines is a good example of how well time is being managed, that you've been able to proportion time in order to get the task done. That also goes for initiating tasks. being able to actually get started because you've been able to find the time or make time, which is a phrase I hate, but the idea of being able to get on with things because you have seen an opportunity to manage your time in order to start. For some people, that is very difficult to do. I can't, like tax returns doesn't make me want to do them. I find that incredibly hard to initiate. So my time management around that is terrible. But generally speaking, I love a good deadline. Big picture scheduling. That's a big part of managing time, is understanding what time looks like in units. So understanding the detail of it, but also understanding, if you zoomed out, how time is going to be apportioned. So being able to see, understanding time perhaps in calendar format. So seeing how a whole timeline is going to work rather than necessarily just seeing what happens minute by minute. Keeping track of things in a similar vein, really. Are you able to see how long tasks take you to do? Even basic as that, managing your time with I've got a task to do, I just need 15 minutes, it'll get done, and then 2 hours later you're still doing the same task. That's your perception of time as well, and keeping track of things. That might be something that is actually quite difficult for you. Again, it's no sign that anything's wrong with you. It's the fact that that's more difficult for you to be able to manage than for some people. Flow. The flow, managing flow and change. Change obviously happens to us all the time. It is constant, and particularly in a workplace. And there might be some very useful structures within an industry, perhaps, within project deadlines. But even within that, there's always going to be change. And whether that is a change to resources, people, money, finances, budgets, locations, demands, clients, there's always going to be change to navigate. And for some of us, that's fine. You have a natural aptitude, and that feels fine in your brain to be able to roll with it, to be flexible. For some people, it really creates wild discomfort, that actually managing change, managing and maintaining flow is something that is not easy. It's something that's quite difficult, that needs to be worked at, but is not something that just becomes easy. I used to think I was great at maintaining flow, managing change. And then I'm honest with myself. I'm like, no, it creates a real disturbance for me. And I have to really work hard at returning to that. So, it's not necessarily everyone's easy place. But for some, the ability to cope with the unexpected, I marvel at people that are very unflappable, very calm, and that they can manage that change. And actually, adaptability to changes is really important. So just because we ride through and survive change, have we also been very able to reflect and adapt and change ourselves, to change our practices, change our responses, to learn from it in order to be more adaptive to the change in the future. So that adaptability is also, as one might describe it, as resilience, but adaptability to changes, your willingness to sort of bend and evolve really as change comes along. Or is there always a need to essentially try and maintain how it has been in the past? And then that sort of breeds into sort of prioritizing, which in some way is also connected to order and time. But prioritizing is really important when we're managing flow and change, because the priorities may also have to change. And you may have to sort of bump things up or get rid of things and compromise, negotiate, and being able to shift prioritizing accordingly, maybe just more difficult for some people than others. Okay. And then the last one, the fourth word is attention. Now, obviously, this speaks to anybody who may be ADHD. And this is actually, I've learned most about attention by understanding neurodivergence, but in particular ADHD. And the executive functioning around attention is helpful for us all to understand how the brain manages attention, because it's affected by it. Everyone has an attention span. Everyone has a relationship with attention. Some are neurologically predisposed to have harder attention, attention deficits, or that they find it more difficult. But also, attention is also linked to the tasks you're doing, the environment you might be in, your medical state, your menopausal state. It could be a variety of factors. It isn't just neurological, like lack of sleep, for example. So how the brain manages attention is something that must be considered by all, okay? Because we all have a different relationship with it. And that is about obviously maintaining attention in tasks. And that could be listening to someone like me talk. How long are you able to do that before maybe needing to change modalities? Having your, how do you control impulses, by being able to realize that you might have been saturated and need to step away. And that's going to be different from different people. I know, interestingly, when I've done some training workshops myself where I've been an attendee and somebody has provided no slides and it's just talk the whole time, and I cannot retain that information. So I just start zoning out, and then I actually get really distressed by it because I just can't maintain attention. It's not because I have an attention problem, it's because that mode of receiving information just does not work for me. And I don't have another stimulus to work with. So like my impulse control it is changing according to that situation. This goes for retaining information. How our short-term memory, our working memory operates is entirely related to your learning style and how you receive visual, audio, and physical sensory information. And then also attention can also relate to those that find it easy or difficult to be aware of their surroundings and other people whilst focusing. So there can be a hyper-focus state, but that also might have a negative in terms of a lack of awareness of people around you or lack of awareness of the environment that you might be in. That can be your personal safety as much as it can be your connectivity with other people that you might have to share a space with. So attention obviously manifests in different ways. Now, understanding these four sort of pillars of our executive functioning is super helpful, particularly when you manage a team or when you're in a leadership position, is to consider that everyone is going to have a different relationship to this. Just because your company operates and the project operates in a certain way does not mean there is a natural comfort with order, time, flow, and attention, that actually this is something that people find easy and difficult every moment of the day. Okay, so obviously you'll get the slides after this, so you can refer back to this because that was a lot of information, I appreciate. Now, I'm going to go back to your task, your sheet now. So the aim for this is to be able to put across, just like you did with the VARK. I'd like to put across in the sections that we've highlighted of order, time, flow, and attention. And for you to come up with your own rating, your own score. There's no scientific, this is very subjective. We would like you to score how you feel about these four parts of your executive functioning. But we're going to do a similar thing with the VARK test with the numbering. So we want like 1 being extremely difficult for you. For example, if managing time is extremely difficult, I would put 1 or 2, for example. If I found managing order and structure really easy for me, I'd put like 15 or 16. Okay, if I was kind of like middly, managing attention sort of depends, but generally, it's not too bad. Then I might put 6 to 10, an 8 or 9, for example. And the idea is to kind of see where you might sit on that scale. Again, no one is going to see this result except you. So there's no judgment. Again, there's no getting it right or getting it wrong. And this is going to give you a brief as to like when to think about how you would answer this. So this is mine. This is my managing order and structure. So this is me putting the crosses on to see where how I think it reflects me. Okay. My score around managing flow is my honest answer. My managing attention is probably honest, but I know that I'm better with time and order. For me, I find it easy. Okay, so there's an example of how I would do it. And I want to name this the wheel of neuro-identity. You can call it the Ferris wheel of neuro-identity if you want, but I call it the wheel of neuro-identity. That's what this diagram is all about. And the wheel itself is a way to bring all of this understanding together. It's a snapshot of your neuro-identity. It's not all of it, appreciate it. It's all about how you think about these aspects of your executive functioning. So for you, I'm about to do this task and I'll give you some time. I want you to imagine you are at work. I want you to imagine you are at workstation or desk, wherever you operate in your company. And I want you to consider those 4 aspects of your executive functioning and how they present during an average day at work, because I appreciate this is all contextual and I don't want you to think about how you might be at home or on holiday or whatever, just about you sat at work and how you cope with order, with time, with flow and attention. So I'm going to leave you to do this task now, and I'm going to be back in 5 minutes because it might take a little bit of thinking time. So I'd just like you to put the crosses on the sections of your worksheet that best represent how you feel about your order, your managing and your relationship with order, time, flow and attention. If you've got any problems or questions, stick it in the chat by all means. But I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So 4:15, we will return. Again, I'm going to turn my camera and mic off so I'm not looking at you. And we will come back and complete the rest of the diagram. Okay, I'm living for the chat, by the way. What a joy that has been to watch coming in the last 5 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. You're all ahead of me. So I am just going to, hang on, just going to go to Mentimeter before we jump into looking at your diagrams. So I would love to know. Okay, I just wanted to do a little check-in because it's wonderful to see everyone's diagrams, but I would love to know if you're able to if you want to, you're not sharing a score, but I would like to know what part of the executive function feels easy. So who scored high in which order, time, flow, and attention? And for high, I would say between scores of 10 and 16, when you felt that that was a good thing. Okay, order, okay. Okay. Anybody else want to add which part of the executive function felt easy? Okay, we've got order and flow. Okay, so time and attention being two types of parts of your executive functioning that did not feel easy. Okay, that's really interesting to know. Okay, I'm going to ask same question, but the other way. I'm going to ask what part of your executive functioning feels difficult? Again, that's scoring, 0 to like 1 to 6. Okay. Okay. So attention obviously coming out there is the thing that is most difficult and most time there about being able to manage that part of your executive functioning at work. So that is something, if you're managing a team of people, to maybe consider. This is an important starting place to consider how best to be empathetic towards other people's brains. Okay, we're going to get onto that in a second. So I'm going to go back. Come on, computer. I'm going to go back. My computer will behave. There we go. You're already ahead of me. So the idea is obviously to join up the dots, join up those crosses. And you'll see, so this is mine. This is my green wheel of neuro-identity. And what we're, it's like, I do actually, doesn't look like a brain, doesn't it? The idea of being able to join it up is a bit of fun, really, in terms of this is not a scientific experiment, but what it is demonstrating is that it's a different shape to everybody else's. And that this is a way of talking about my neuro-identity. I need a visual cue. So this is the shape of my neuro-identity. And I don't need to change my shape for anyone. No one is a perfect circle. No one scores 16 out of 16 on everything. It's impossible. So the idea is being able to fall in love with the shape of your neuro-identity, but more importantly, understand that yours is different to everyone else's. And it's not about forcing these shapes to conform to one type of shape or to yours. You don't have to change it. This is why this is not about strengths and weaknesses. This is about understanding your brain and your neuro-identity in relation to others. So I asked my lovely wife, who gave me full consent, to try this test out on her. She loves pink. She wears a lot of Adidas. Very true representative of her in the bottom corner, just like mine. My wife does have ADHD, dyspraxia, and a few other things. but actually is a researcher and works in neurodivergence. So we talk about this kind of stuff all the time about executive functioning. So when she did her wheel of neuroidentity, it looks quite different to mine. Hers is slightly more star-shaped. She obviously struggles a lot with attention and time, but is, like me, very visual and kinesthetic. So we just have different neuroidentities. The important thing is to understand how to understand the places where it is different and places where it's an alignment, not because we want to change, but because those are the key areas where we perhaps, even as a couple, we need to negotiate and navigate, and then celebrate the places that we are in alignment, and we can lean into those things that actually are easy for us. But what we did with my wife was did an exercise of her boss, her line manager, who also works within the field of neurodivergency and teaching, and very different. And again, it's not a complete science, but it was very interesting looking at where the differences are between the two of them. And obviously the boss has a particular skill set within his planning. So he finds it giving his attention and time and order very easy, but he finds it very hard to sort of translate that into visual and kinesthetic sort of learning. Whereas obviously my wife has that is much easier for her. So there's a gap there in terms of understanding things from a visual and a kinesthetic point of view. But interestingly, my wife said how nice it was to feel that her boss actually had some of the things that she finds more difficult that were easy for him, so that she actually felt supported. She actually felt, oh, I'm really glad that actually, and he knows about all of this, so that he can be more empathetic to the fact that attention is harder for her, but easier for him. So he is more empathetic that there's a difference between the two of them. So it was really nice to hear that actually it felt nice to know somebody had your back when it came to a difference in how your brains operate. He's not interested in improving Katie's attention. He wants to understand how best to support it. So those gaps are really interesting to look at, particularly when you're managing. Then we added a third person. Third person is a fictional person, but we sort of based it on a few people we know who might have quite a different neuroidentity, one that might cause conflict. And this is a person that really struggles with order, that really struggles with time management. Like, it's a really difficult task for them, but they are super relaxed when it comes to like dealing with change and flow. They just go with the flow. It's a very embodied approach, but obviously that is not something that's the strength of either the boss or of my wife as part of the team. So but because of the lack of order, then it kind of creates a lot of conflict there. There's obviously an alignment with regards to, you know, speaking and writing and using that information. And there's something that this other person leans into connected to my wife, and there's some things that leans into connected with the boss. So you can see the dynamic of three people. Now, the aim isn't to just get them all the same. The aim is to pick out where are the lacking of alignments, what can be done to negotiate and navigate and request in those gaps. It's really helpful to just think about this as a way to understand how your team relates to order, time, flow, and attention differently. So I would highly recommend, so that if you feel you're in a small and trusted team, to maybe do the exercise together, just to see how everyone's diagrams look different. And to just understand that in your office there's a whole load of different shapes. But I'm going to go back to the word difficult, because it's something that has been mentioned already, about this idea of finding things difficult. But we do tend to call people difficult, like the person creating conflict in that fictional sort of setup that I've just shown you. When we think people are being difficult, what we really mean is that they are different in ways that we don't connect with. And that is what I mean by our neuroidentities being different. And it's important that I know I've called it, but it's people who've called me it, and I've witnessed lots of people being referred to as being difficult at work. It's a really violent word to use. Please don't use it. Sorry if you receive it. But actually, what it means and trying to understand where that word comes from is this difference in our neuroidentities. And because of these differences, it's really hard to connect with people that come from very different executive functioning positions. So we understand this word does need to shift to the word different, because difficult people, when we refer to them, or you're referred to as one, is actually just code for like, there's a disconnect here. And we could even see the disconnect through our neuroidentities, let alone our values and intentions. But when we are disconnected, we take things personally. And we obviously are trying to avoid this. This is how we build better mental health and safeguarding and dignity and respect at work, by improving our connection, and also for you to safeguard yourself so that you don't take things personally to the point that it damages your well-being. So this understanding of like this difference within our brains is important in terms of how we look at people. Here's an example of difficult. Actually, this is an example of the shape of neuroidentity for what one might describe as a difficult person. So maybe they struggle with order. Maybe they struggle with flow. Maybe they find managing attention problematic. Maybe that's really difficult to manage their attention, but people then read them as being difficult, but actually they're really, really hot on time management. So, you know, maybe it's confusing to somebody else who doesn't connect with this type of neuroidentity. So here's an example of actually what difficult might be actually going on, and why there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that's the shape of that brain. Here's another word when someone gets described as being lazy. This could be somebody, again, who finds time management, order very difficult. Maybe they're not very visual, so that actually you might not see output and see those visual things. So you don't know that somebody is actually really leaning into the oral work. Maybe their read and write thing isn't something readily accessed by somebody else. Maybe actually they're incredibly good at dealing with change, so aren't always super vocal and super like, you know, in your face dealing with where's the order and where's the time management. So again, how we might view somebody as lazy, actually this is what their brain shape might be going on inside. Same with rude. Someone who doesn't manage, who finds impulse control quite difficult, like their attention, but also is very particular regarding order and time and reading and writing, but actually is struggling when speaking and receiving information orally. So is very and is struggling perhaps with flow, and finds that very difficult to manage. But maybe it just comes across as rude or aloof or obtuse. So this idea of this word being leveled at people, really, that might be the brain shape. Same with disorganized. There's a brain shape of somebody who's incredibly great practically, good at speaking to people, great with flow, but is actually really struggling with order and time, attention, and maybe reading and writing is not that strength. And so people could just level, well, this person's just really disorganized. I'm like, well, no, their executive functioning works like this. Maybe it's the tasks aren't aligning to their executive functioning right now. So we need to look at that rather than just thinking that they're disorganized and moving on. Same goes for aggressive, okay? Those that potentially really find flow and change difficult, attention difficult, maybe actually being able to write down and needing to express themselves in other ways can come across as aggressive. This has been leveled at me in the past because I've been I find it so easy to be ordered and deal with time. And I'm super like love a structure. And when I come across an environment where people are like not quite as ahead of perhaps seeing what I'm seeing, then I get quite passionate about helping them see, but then they would just label me as aggressive. So this idea of how these words are thrown out to people is violent and it's powerful. And what it means is that we're not actually looking at how neuroidentities are manifesting, and all we're seeing is difference. We need to meet that difference, not just give it labels that are easy to be violent towards others and diminish them because they're simply different from our own brains. So that's a helpful way to understand, perhaps when you hear some of these phrases, to think actually, what's the shape of their neuroidentity in their brain going on at this moment in time? So the aim to become truly connected with our own neuro-identity before connecting with others, I would implore you, if you're in a position of management and leadership, to be able to fully understand your own neuro-identity, to give you that empathy to realizing that there's difference all around you. So we're going to go back to our triangles, because I've missed them, because we've been talking about brains and circles. So I have to go beyond back to triangles. We've now introduced the mountain goat, because we've built our peak here. Now we've topped it up. Now it's a really satisfying shape for me. And the sheep's hiding there at the bottom right-hand corner. But I need to keep the connection going. I've understood all this information now. We've done the handbook. We've understood how to understand all these parts of our brains. But keeping the momentum going is something that's really difficult and important. So okay, how are we going to do that? That's the next challenge, really. And I want to go back to a slide that I showed right in the keynote and right in the first session, and it was going back to this value action gap and how, why it's there. And if you remember, we looked at the subjective perception of time and when we feel too busy, and that led us down the path of understanding fast and slow thinking and the speed of how we navigate our communications. And then the other aspect was the role of imitation. So when there is a lack of role modeling, the gap persists. The idea is that someone kind of needs to go ahead for others to follow. That is true of most of human behavior. We feel more comfortable when someone has shown us the way, rather than going it alone, completely blind. So this idea of the role of imitation is something I'd like to lean a little bit more into now. And I'd like to build the yellow triangle of role modeling on top of our structure. We've built a structure so we can build more on top of it. It's not there just to sit pretty. We actually can continue the good work. So the idea on the top of our structure is to build the yellow triangle of the role modeling, and that your position is there. You're standing on the foundation of all your understanding around the 4-step framework. Observations, feelings, needs, requests, the human handbook. You're standing there, understanding how to bridge your good intentions to best practice. And there you are on the top, now knowing how to role model this. The Triforce of Advocacy, love this. This is the second time the Triforce has made an appearance in sport. I love it. I might have to change my model. I'm gonna ask you at this moment in time, though, before we just dive into role modeling, a little bit more about the human handbook in your own organisation, so I can understand it a little bit better from your perspective. I'd like to go on to this penultimate question of ranking. So there's a little bit of an exercise on Menti where there are 6 options here. This is recruitment, onboarding, feedback, performance reviews, project management, training and development. And I'd like you to rank in order, from the first being where it could be most useful to 6th where it could be least useful. How could the human handbook be useful in your organisation? Ooh, training development's creeping up there. It's okay if you are not in a position to think about how it could be useful in your organisation. I don't know what everyone's jobs are on this call, but if you can have a little stab at it based on what you currently know. Okay. I think performance reviews and training development are neck and neck. Does anybody else want to? Onboarding is just edged in there. It's about as exciting as it gets. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Looks like performance reviews is one. Come out on top today. Onboarding is a close second, followed by training and development. So interestingly, recruitment not so much for people. feedback less so. But obviously being able to utilize that as a tool within performance reviews is fantastic, because obviously that will come naturally as part of probably one-to-one or small settings where you can actually speak to people rather than it being something more perfunctory. So fantastic input. Thank you so much for adding that information. I'm just going to go back to the slides, because I want to talk a little bit more about my view of role modeling. So it's helpful to understand where you could put it in your company, but I want to talk about a little bit more about how you could think about role modeling in a slightly different way. There we go. There's the human handbook being sent out. I'd love it to sort of be sent out into your universe of work, and how you can role model its usage everywhere. So think of yourself being in a much elevated position to be able to share this information more widely with people, because you have learnt everything you've learnt through these sessions. And I want you to think about role modeling in these 4 aspects. Now, this takes, from obvious reasons, this speaks to the VARK test. So being able to role model in a visual way, an aural way, a read and write way, and a kinesthetic way. That's a really helpful way to think about, are you hitting all 4 corners of good practice when it comes to role modeling? So if we think about how you could utilize the human handbook, we could think about, how well are you showing, demonstrating it and making it visible to people? How is it being used within your organization? Is it just languishing in an email signature, which is all good, but it's passive and will require somebody to access it? Are you being a bit more transparent with it? Is there some improved visibility? Is it literally printed out and pinned up somewhere near your workstation so others could look at it, or you can refer to it? Is it something that you've actually digitally shared and talked through with somebody? So how good are you actually hitting the visual one, when certain people do actually really take in information in that visual way? And you're making it explicit that actually this is something you're very happy to share, and maybe it is a culture-wide thing that is people are happy to share it and see it. Thinking hourly, like people talking about it. So this speaks very much to the feedback and the performance reviews. Actually talking about the content, talking about the nature of the human handbook itself. Can it be part of your culture conversations within your organization? Is it a phrase that everyone's familiar with? They might not have done it, but they've heard it. Are they willing to ask questions about it? Are you willing to answer? And are you being able to talk about the content in human handbooks, perhaps when doing a performance review? Is this something that you can see as being a great conversation starter, and that in doing so you could further obviously build connection, but it can be useful essentially as a conversation starter, and you can have people talking about what is written in their human handbooks or what you've learned. And that also extends to your learning of the framework, how you demonstrate a good conversation that relies on observation, feelings, needs and requests. Have you demonstrated that in a conversation? Have you even signposted that that's what you're doing, so people can hear it come out of your mouth, but also hear it being put into action? Then we think of read and write. Getting people reading them obviously is helpful. That can be in an email signature, or you can send it as a document for people to read, but also getting people to evolve and edit them, making time. And maybe that's a performance review where you get to write and re-edit, because as you go through your working life and your personal life, you'll get an opportunity to be able to reflect on your practice and to be able to start shifting things yourself. So good to be able to edit it. Human handbook is a living thing. It's a living document. So let's kind of keep it going, and maybe writing about it together is a useful action to further build connection. And then we think of the kinesthetic. For people like me, love a workshop. I love running them, but I like participating in those practical things, stepping away from the computer screen and actually having something physical to work on. Having a task that people practically do, sat down, cutting and pasting it together, having a chance to fill it in, or working together. Maybe playing with the structure of the 4 stages of the framework, something that you could put into place to be able to have a kinesthetic experience, sensory experience at work in a room, if that was applicable and suitable to the people that wanted to attend. So for those that enjoy that practical element, maybe it's simply about where you're doing it and a location that provides different sensory stimuli for people. So have a think about how the Human Handbook can live in those ways that we learn, because that's true role modeling. It's not like you're just leading by example, going, here's mine, do your own. This is more about, actually, I'm thinking about how the Human Handbook works with all brain styles as much as possible. So that's my offering today, is for you to consider how you role model it yourself, but also how it could start to be built and role modeled within the culture of your organization. But now what? Okay, we just got more triangles. We've just got a yellow triangle, and now we've got a mountain goat. So now what do we do? So the idea is to like build a bit more. The goat says build. We need to build supportive leadership. And it's because we need to know what it looks like. It's the big question I asked at the beginning about, like, what does it look like? Because if you don't know what it looks like, how do we know if we've got it? And how does everybody else recognize that they're receiving it? So I wanted to create this model for you to be able to build something more powerful so that you can actually see what supportive leadership looks like. It's like a beacon for people. I realized when I did the slide, you'll all be on mute, so this doesn't really work, and I'm not going to do it by myself because that's just plain sad. So drum roll, please. Here is the reveal of the wheel of neuro-identity sitting on top of the triangle, the Triforce. I'm going to use that because somebody said it earlier. It's brilliant. The Triforce of the Human Handbook and understanding. But what we're going to do is we're going to put the wheel of neuro-identity that we have created today, and we're going to put it so it can spin on the apex of all our understanding and our learning. And this is the shape of supportive leadership that we're aiming towards. This is how we keep the connection going. This is where you put the wheel. Spin that wheel, exactly. The wheel doesn't just sit on a piece of paper in a folder somewhere on a training session. This is about learning to build something to keep this wheel moving. And that's important to me. This is why this is something that is all about in action. Okay, so like the wheel's up there now. It's quite high, you know, Ferris wheel sitting on top of a giant mountain with a goat. But it's a powerful symbol for you to work towards, because for me, supportive leadership, the most supporting way to lead is to help your team advocate for their own neuro-identities using the Human Handbook. So you're bringing the two parts together. You're bringing the wheel of neuro-identity with the Human Handbook. Your job as a leader is not to accommodate everybody's brain. It's not to change your entire organization to fit everyone's possible need and accommodate every possible neuro-identity. Your job as a supportive leader is to actually build a space where people can advocate for their own neuro-identities in safe, respectful, and connective ways. So you're the one creating this model. You keep the wheel spinning. You keep the foundation of your learning alive and strong, but you're in this space so others can advocate for what they need. Whatever comes with requesting, whatever changes need to be made, it will be, you know, unique to you and unique to your company. We can't possibly say what they should be, but we can put you in this place where you are in the strongest possible position to help your team advocate for what it is they need. That's a way to really, truly build supportive leadership that's based on connection. So there's where you're aiming for. You are underneath the giant Ferris wheel on a big triangle. But the aim is to build a bridge with the Human Handbook, and you've done that already. And now you keep the connection going with the wheel of neuro-identity. Those are the two big elements as part of this model. And as you'll remember, because I'm, you know, through and through an artist and designer, and I'm kinesthetic, now you will know, I do love practical tools. I love driving change with these practical tools. I need to see something. And so I'm going to just do a recap about how this tool how it's manifested really, and how you can draw it yourself, how you can remember this, because it's something quite straightforward. We drew two triangles. We understood there was a gap between the two of them. Then we used the framework. Okay, we drew a third triangle and we split it into 4, and we saw that it was a framework of observation, feeling, needs, and requests that allowed us to build a connection with somebody, allowed them to self-advocate and to advocate for other people's needs. And we worked through that model. And then we flipped it on its head, because we're being activist leaders here. We're being active in terms of how we're trying to improve things. So we flipped it on its head and we made the hidden visible. And in doing that, we brought the human handbook right to the surface. There it was. It was an ultimate way to request things. It had as much information as we were willing to share in order to best improve our connection with people. So that's what we did. We turned it on its head. We filled it in. And so we brought the human handbook to the top. And then today we stuck another triangle on, because we can keep building on this work. So we improved the way that we can view role modeling, and then we share the human handbook. We've learned how it comes to the top. Now we can send it out from a more powerful position, to be able to send it out to others and to appreciate all sides, all learning modes. And then we drew a wheel. We went full circle, pun intended. We created the wheel of neuro-identity for everyone to use. This is for everyone. And the idea was to be able to see a different shape, and for everyone to have space for their own shapes. Then we put it all together. We put it together to create a visible model for managers and leaders to share with all employees. It is a circle on top of a triangle, but the idea is it's something that represents a symbol for you to work towards, a symbol that you can transmit and share with your organization and your employees as a sign that you are willing and trying and being curious about supportive leadership. It's a signal to everyone to say, yeah, this is what I'm working towards. But more importantly, it's so simple as a shape. If you drew it and explained to your employees how to draw it, they too would understand why the shape has come about. And in doing so, you've built connection, you've empowered them, and you've allowed them to have a tool in which they can advocate for themselves. So I will go back to that supportive leadership, the woolliness of the word, and the idea of not knowing what supportive leadership actually looks like. I can't tell you exactly what to say and what to do in your organization. It doesn't have a true definition. But what we have done is being able to create a signal to people that every leader and manager would actually know what supportive is, because we've signed it. We've told people this is how we can work towards it. And therefore, all of the people that you work with in your team, people you're responsible for, would learn through culture change to recognize and accept it. So having gone from the woolly sheep, as much as we love a woolly sheep, we have gone to a shape that is the shape of supportive leadership. And if you took that shape and you remembered how you can draw it, and you drew it for somebody else, you could put it in all aspects of your culture. These are just fun ideas, but the idea is that if that symbol became somewhere where it really signposts to people, where you have an open door policy where it can be discussed, where you are demonstrating how you came up with the shape, if you made it visible to people that it's something that you're willing to work towards, if it's something, I don't know, you wear it on a badge on a lanyard, you could put it in a report. You don't have to have it as a giant sign on top of your building if you want to, but hey, why not? But the idea is, make that symbol a call to action, a call to say, I'm here for supportive leadership. This is what it looks like. I can tell you how I can put it together, and we can do that together. So that's largely it from me. I'm going to remind you that the Human Handbook is a living, breathing document. The symbol can live as much as it's able to, but so can the Human Handbook. If you can remember to have it in all the rooms in your organization, may it have a seat at the table, may it be something that is a companion to the projects that you do, and something that you can live along. Try and think of it as a living document, rather than just something as a as a piece of paper. But if you would benefit from in-person or customized sort of how to human training for your organization, and how maybe to further this works that's more bespoke to the challenges and the setup and the hierarchy and the structures of your organization, we're here for that. We're here to translate this bigger ideas into how it could work for you. So please get in touch with the wonderful team at Safe in Our World at the email. And then to finish off, I'm going to because we've got 10 minutes time for some feedback and some questions. I would like to ask you one last mentee question, if you're willing, is to give us some feedback. I'm just going to switch to the last mentee slide. If you're able, with the 3 goats, what 3 words or concepts will you take away from today's session? I would just love to know, of all the modeled concepts, the words and phrases we used today, what really landed with you, if you're able? I mean, prizes for anyone who gets circle and triangle, because I'm like, that's winning. Not that I'm, you know, the Triforce of advocacy, excellent. Living, breathing document, yeah. Drop difficult, shape of leadership, fantastic. Executive functioning, yeah. Being curious, love that. Lead by example. Goats. same as the other session, love it. Don't assume rudeness, yeah. New identities matter, yes they do, thank you so much. Okay, role model is always in the lead at the moment. Not that it's a competitive at all. Everyone has potential. That's really positive. That's a lovely thing to say. Whoever said that, thank you. Okay, I'm going to leave that running in the background. I just want to say my thank yous with you. Huge thanks to everybody at Safe in Our World, to Sky for hosting, and for Sarah, who's on the call today. Please do check out all the amazing work that they do, all the training and things that they offer on safeinourworld.org. They're a fantastic organisation. And if you've got any feedback, I think they're going to send out feedback forms in due course. You will, of course, receive slides from today's presentation, and there will always be a recording for you to be able to refer back to if that is helpful to you. Otherwise, always here to answer questions. I'm going to stop sharing now. We've got 8 minutes left in which to maybe reflect on any questions in chat, or if you have any questions, I think we can stop the recording if you want to sort of be